Okay, just joined the meeting room, and now Nick Bray should be in. Okay, so it's time to call it to order. So let's get started. Welcome everybody to the Fairfield Gonzales Community Association CALUC's preliminary meeting regarding a development proposal for 515 Foul Bay. Before we get started, I'll just do a quick territorial acknowledgement. On behalf of FGCA, I acknowledge the ancestral, traditional, and unceded Aboriginal territories of the Coast Salish people, in particular the Wasanic and the Kwungan, on whose territory we work, live, and play. We'll do some quick introductions. My name is Dave Thompson. I'm the Vice President of the Fairfield Gonzales Community Association and a member of our CALUC. I'm standing in for Joanna Fox as acting chair of tonight's meeting. And other members of CALUC that are present on the Zoom meeting include Kevin White and Don Mansour. If you care to say hello, gentlemen, and wave your hands. And then I'll just tell everybody a little bit about the CALUC process here while I let people in from the waiting room. So the CALUC process is determined by the City of Victoria. Lots of information on their website about how it actually works. The role of our CALUC committee and any CALUC is to facilitate dialogue between land use applicants and the community members to identify community questions and concerns regarding the application as it may be coming, and provide suggestions on how it might be changed to be more appropriate for the neighborhood. Then our CALUC drafts a fair, unbiased, balanced report to the city on what discussions took place. The CALUC does not take positions, although other committees of the Community Association may take positions. Prior to the community meeting, where the community has a chance to ask questions and make comments, we have this preliminary meeting. So at this preliminary meeting, the proponent, or sometimes we call them the applicant or developer, presents the plans in 10 minutes, and CALUC members can ask questions or make comments. We've instituted a couple of new procedures since our last meeting. We're recording meetings, and we're going to be posting those recordings and inviting comments by email. This is all explained on the FGCA website. We're also asking proponents to discuss how their proposals address the climate emergency and the goals and targets of the City of Victoria's Climate Leadership Plan, as also explained on the CALUC website. And often questions have already been coming up over the last few years about things like EV charging, shared vehicles, insulation, energy efficiency, heat pumps, bike parking, waste separation facilities, and the like. So this meeting is just the first stage in the process. If anybody from the community wants to follow along, you can watch for our website where we will post any updates. For instance, if there is a community meeting called, you can sign up also for email updates from FGCA, because we do notify members. And then later on, if there is an application made, it'll go on the city's development tracker website, and there's lots of ways you can provide your input directly to City Council. City Council makes decisions on these applications. The CALUC does not make any decisions. So we're going to turn it over to Richard and his team. I'll ask you to introduce yourselves briefly. You'll have 10 minutes to present, and then CALUC committee members will may have questions and comments. And we'll try to keep them very concise and down to a couple of minutes. So, Richard, why don't you introduce yourself and your team?
Hi, I'm Richard Gill. I'm the development manager with GMC Projects. And Jordan Milne, who is our CEO and president, will be giving the presentation.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, David, for the explanation and the introduction. And pleased to be here, albeit virtually, with you this evening. So before you this evening, we have a discussion on proposed development application and land use application for 515 Foul Bay Road. Richard, if you could move the next slide. Excellent. So today's conversation will involve an introduction to ourselves, a little bit about GMC's experience, our approach to respecting the past, some context on the property, including the previous applications, what we've learned, and how that's informed our current proposal. So in attendance with me tonight is obviously Richard Gill, but as well our architect Nick Bray, and I even see who wasn't expected to be here, but Will Paraboom is I can see with us, and as well Niall Patil, our engagement coordinator. Some other folks who are not with me, my partner and our Vice President of Development, Tony Kiptu, who you can see on the right of that photograph, our landscape architecture team, Chris and Bev Winjack, and as well our arborist, Jeremy Guy. So to give you some context about GMC, if you're unfamiliar with who we are, heritage is a key element of our DNA. And so on this screen, you can see three different projects, all with heritage character that have been projects we've done. On the left, One Alexander, federally listed Class A heritage building that was the site of the first ever City Hall of the City of Vancouver after the Great Fire of 1886. In the middle, the Adelphi block, which you may recognize from the corner of Yates and Government, which was a restoration and rehabilitation project we completed in September of 2020. And on your right, the Bell Apartments, which is the restoration of that three-story vintage building after it had suffered a fire in 2017. And we had acquired the building from the owner after that and rehabbed the building to bring the rental back to market, as well as reposition former warehouse space to additional rental. Some context for this property, as you're aware, the property sits at 515 Foul Bay Road. As you can see on your left, an aerial photo showing an outline of the property, and on your right, an aerial photo showing some of the context to Gonzales Beach, the Fairfield Plaza, and Margaret Jenkins School. The site presents an opportunity to create a unique grove of housing for families and to secure existing rental in the Fairfield Gonzales neighborhood. As I mentioned, respecting the past is an important part of the work that we do. And as part of our proposal, we're proposing to maintain the existing heritage structure on the property and are in discussions with heritage staff at the city about the potential for a protection bylaw. But we're in discussions regarding the implications for existing challenges relative to the insurance market and ensuring that any bylaw that's drafted is one that doesn't prevent us from being able to obtain insurance or leave us with a significant uninsurable liability. From recent context, we had the benefit of being able to listen to council and members of the community and read correspondence from a prior application from the previous owner, under which they sought the subdivision of the property to create 3 new single-family homes. And we listened to the concerns around the contextual fit for this, its implication to tree removal, the design, and whether or not it was suitable relative to the influence of the heritage structure on the property, but some positive things relative to the protected area and potentially the landscape plan as well. So what we've learned is informed what we are here today to present to you. And there's 6 key elements of our proposal that I'd like to touch on. One is livability. We've prepared a proposal that takes into consideration adequate sizing of units in order to actually ensure that the spaces we're creating are livable for those who may occupy them. We're preparing a proposal that's contextual to the heritage building that surrounds it. A proposal that's restorative to the grounds surrounding it by the removal of invasive species and the thoughtful planting of new Gary oak trees and other replacement trees. Diverse in the type of housing being provided, being new 1-bedroom and 3-bedroom units alongside a lock-off space within some of the units to create the flexibility for a further diverse array of family types. Secure in being able to secure the existing rental and as well protective of that existing heritage home. Our plan started, although we're here today on August 26th of 2021, our conceptualizing of this site really began in September of 2020. And as you can see on your left, version A, which was really the first site plan that we had conceptually developed, and took to the city of Victoria and took to the arborist and really discussed the implications of the site. One of the things that has been foremost in our minds in looking at this is how do we minimize the implication to the existing land? How do we stay as light on the land as we possibly can? You'll see between revision A and revision B, the main change is the 4-unit building along the north side is split into 2. And this was in direct response to the arborist, whose suggestion was that if we didn't make that kind of a nod, the tree behind it that you can see identified more so in revision B, that tree would have been lost as a result of the proposal. So in order to mitigate that, we split that building. Further, as you see in revision C, we met with city staff and heritage, and in conversation with them, the grouping of buildings that you can see down coming up the driveway, the city felt that right now the presence of the existing heritage building is really only visible from its side as a result of the existing panhandle configuration of the lot, and that structures located in that location would have the likelihood of creating a visual impediment to the existing heritage structure. And so as a result, you see on revision C that those 3 units had been located on the rear of the building. After further discussing with the city implications about that, we came forward with the plan that is before you right now, where those 3 units were lost as a result of further site considerations on tree impact and site impact. And so what you see before you is a conceptual plan with 3 new groupings of structures, a cluster of housing to respond to some of the feedback that we heard in the last proposal, a much more attainable housing form. These structures are 9 footprints that would contain 18 new homes with a 1-bedroom home on the main floor and a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home on the upper 2 floors. The setbacks are another consideration we heard clearly from the neighbors in the prior application that had not been respected. So as you can see, our east setback and our north setback are at 7.5 meters to the operable windows of the structure, which is consistent with the existing zoning. Our proposed site coverage is 18%, which is below the 25% permissibility under the existing zoning. Our density proposed is a 0.49. This is approximate. We'll confirm these before our formal community meeting, but the approximate 0.49 in terms of the FSR comparative to the 0.5. And you can see on the, actually, Richard, if you step back for a second, you can see on the bottom of this image, the hash marked area that is hash marked in red. We're proposing at least 25% of the site area be protected in perpetuity as a no build protected zone for Gary Oak, for a Gary Oak meadow. And further, Richard, if you can skip to the next slide. In terms of what we're trying to do and where it aligns with the City of Victoria, the City of Victoria has a numerous support for ground-oriented housing forms within the OCP. And our proposal aims to align with the attainable housing objectives contained within the City of Victoria's strategic plan, within the missing middle infill housing under their housing strategy, and to really secure the existing rental housing, which is an objective of the city through their existing rental housing policies. This is an example floor plan of one of the groupings of buildings. As you can see on the main floor, which is identified as lower floor, you enter in a foyer. There's a set of stairs that would lead you up to the family unit on the upper floors. And there is a lock-off door on the main floor to a 1-bedroom unit. The intention of what we're trying to create and understanding the needs of housing for families in the community these days is to create a diverse array of housing types. And by doing this, we create the opportunity for the potential for a family to occupy the upper floors and grandparents to be on the main floor to enable a unique way of co-housing and to have individual space, but shared space when one wants.
Jordan,
at this time, I'd like
just to let you know we're at the 2-minute point, okay?
Yeah, at this point, I'd like to hand it over to our architect, Nick Bray, just to speak about the exterior architectural elements prior to opening up for discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll fly through this here. The intent of our design was to very much complement and respect the existing building on the site, as well as the neighboring buildings, through color materiality and massing, whilst being architecture very much of this time. We were trying to avoid doing a fake Disneyland style replica of the existing building. Obviously we broke the building massing down into 3 separate blocks that would be subsidiary to the existing building. But also in terms of materiality, if you look at the existing building on the right of this image here, you'll see stone on the lower floor. Above that, you'll see a black box with some black detailing lines within a white paneled system. So we've tried to respect that by coming up with a modern version of it, where we have a stone ground floor with a black dark colored box above it, with white paneling and black lines in between those panels. So yeah, just I think we're running out of time here, so I'll leave it there.
So in summary, what we're proposing is the creation of 18 new homes, securing of the existing 5 rental homes in perpetuity, protecting of many of the existing trees of significance, the creation of a protected Gary Oak Meadow that would be equivalent to a minimum of 25% of the site area, enhancing the site with high quality landscape plan, including a stormwater and rainwater management plan. And this is in alignment with municipal goals to create ground-oriented housing. And now I'll open it up for discussion from members of the CALUC.
Thanks very much for the presentation. Dawn, why don't we start with you? I think you may have the tightest scheduling tonight.
I think the presentation so far is very well done. I think you're going to have to do a little more clarity on the actual houses you're building yourself on the property, so people get a better sense of the size and the scope. And I realize that you're taking a lot of caution not to take more property space than is allowed. That's very wise. But I think the actual homes themselves are very important, and the affordability of those houses as well.
Dawn, just to clarify, so the sizes, 1-bedroom unit that you saw there was about 510 square feet, just in terms of size, if that was your question. Yeah. And then the upper 2 floors comprise 588 square feet for the living, kitchen, and dining space, and a further 545 square feet for the 3 bedrooms and bathroom on the upper floor. They're about 1,200 square feet on average. Some are a little bit bigger, and this one's slightly smaller, but they're about 1,200 square feet on average for the family unit.
Is there any, thank you, is there any estimate on the cost of these for the consumer?
Well, our hope, although we're not sure how this will unfold, we're waiting on further feedback from the city as well, from construction pricing. In terms of our approach, we would very much like to propose that the new units are provided as rental housing instead of as a market for sale product. But in the event that we're unable to make the economics work, which is, as you probably are familiar, quite challenging to do in the missing middle form, then we will have to come up with an approach to address exactly what the units will be offered for.
So in the rental sector, you have any idea what they would rent for if you went that?
You know, I wouldn't want to speculate right now, but you could get a fairly good idea of what a newer 1-bedroom apartment would rent for, or a 3-bedroom unit in your neighborhood. I mean, there's no question these are not necessarily affordable units in the context of deep subsidy affordable housing, because we're simply not being provided subsidies of any kind. And so they would be market rate units that would bear whatever the market would at the time. But our hope would be providing a security in terms of tenure. And if not, would it, at a minimum, secure the existing unsecure rental units?
Thank you. No more questions for myself. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dawn. Kevin, did you have any questions or comments?
Thanks, Dave. Actually, just Dave, one question for you. You mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that this preliminary will be recorded. And what is the venue, or what is the medium that the community can actually respond to the preliminary?
Yeah, so our meetings are getting recorded now and put up, I think, on our website, or possibly a website linked out to YouTube. And then we'll be inviting emails. I guess the emails would be coming after the community meeting. Some people may wish to provide their emails before the community meeting, but they'll be better informed after it, I would think. And we'll have an email address that people can send their thoughts to.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. Jordan, when did you first come to CALUC with the original proposal? I'm just curious, because I know you've been around a few times, but your first proposal to CALUC was a number of years ago, correct?
So it wasn't actually our proposal, Kevin. We only recently acquired the property. It went up for sale in September of last year, August of last year, and we closed on the acquisition of the property in May. So it was a prior applicant, being Alpha Project Developments, and I understand that their applications were between roughly 2016, 2017, and a more recent application that I think they made maybe in 2018 or 19.
Thank you. That's I remember this now. So yeah, it's been a while. So Jordan, one of the things that will come up in the community meeting, of course, is actually how many trees will be removed from the site. Inevitably, it'll be one of the first questions. So I'm just curious how many Gary Oaks, for example, will be removed from the site because of the 18 new homes.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that right now, Kevin. We've been having consultation with our neighbors, and you're absolutely correct. That is one of the very first questions that came up. We've been looking at our civil plan. We really want to be thoughtful in terms of this. The last thing I want to do is come forward and tell you something that doesn't turn out to be true in a couple months. And so I want to be very cautious before providing information on such a sensitive topic. Jeremy Guy, our arborist, is working on that detailed plan right now. And prior to coming forward to the community, formal community meeting, we will certainly have that information. My hope is that we're not going to see any more than about 50% of the existing trees of significance impacted as a result of the proposal. And that obviously doesn't take into consideration trees that are not of significance, of which there may be less impact to on the site. And so really our goal has been, how do we work around and minimize that? That's been a key component of it. And we're even looking at strategies on the foundations of these. We engaged a structural engineer early on to look at how can we do the foundations of these to minimize impact to root zones as well. And that's something that we're working on with Jeremy. It's, obviously not just is there a structure in the context of where a tree is, but is there a structure that is in close enough proximity to have a materially negative impact on the viability of that tree?
An excellent answer and thoughtful, and hopefully it'll be well received by the community. I may have missed it, but sorry, how many parking spaces for the 18 homes?
So there's 18 new homes. There are 5 existing homes, which would create a total of 23. Our site plan today provides for a minimum of 26, the potential for 28. Our goal is to provide for at least 1-to-1 parking of the homes. But again, as we get further into the tree plan, there may be considerations for tree protection that we have to balance off in terms of the provision of parking. And so we may lose some of those parking stalls to create that provision of some more tree protection. But again, that'll be further informed as we get that information from our arborist.
Well, I'm very impressed, and I hope this proceeds and they're through the proper channels. I'm sure Dave has some questions about the environmental and climate issues that he discussed earlier.
Yeah, I do. And first, though, I wanted to ask about, you mentioned moving the units around from sort of place to place, kind of in a clockwise direction towards the end there. I'm wondering if you've given consideration to the sight lines between this property and neighboring yards and houses for privacy, and I guess vice versa, the sight lines the other direction.
Yeah, that certainly was a part of our consideration. In the prior applications, neighbors made themselves known to be concerned around the proximities to the side yard setbacks. And so we've chosen, as I mentioned earlier, to respect those 7.5 setbacks to the north and to the east. Obviously on the south, we have a substantial, I think it's 27.7 meter setback. The real context, I think, would then be as we look at the west side of the property. Right now, if you look on, if Richard can do me a favor, yeah, right there. So there's albeit on our sketch, that looks quite close in the grand scheme of the site size, that's a 3 meter setback. And so the closest structure to any property line of what we're proposing is 3 meters. And we've met with the immediate neighbors to receive feedback. I can't say to you, the neighbors that are immediately adjacent to there, what their position is, but we did have some good discussion with them on the fact that there's considerable planting there. There's considerable grade change. Like if you're ever interested in having a tour of the site, I'm sure we could facilitate that. But there's significant vegetation on their property and our property that provides a good buffer. And then as well, because of the unit orientation, that is a side space. And so we don't intend to have windows overlooking them on that side space. And that, we hope, again, is another measure to mitigate any potential conflict.
Okay.
And sorry, Dave, just before you jump in, Niall here, I'm on the traditional territory of the Wasanic people and helping with the engagement today with GMC. I just thought it's important to add here as well that Jordan and Richard have also committed to a follow-up meeting with the neighbors around the time of submission, just to again reflect the initial feedback that we received on setbacks, buffering, and screening between the properties as well. That will be preceded by a wider spread community meeting where everyone within 200 meters of the site. So we are serious and committed to engaging with the immediate neighbors and the broader community as much as possible to ensure that people understand the application and understand the submission prior to making any further presentations to CALUC or to council itself.
Okay, great. I assume that you folks would be open to receiving calls from anybody, any neighbor who's interested. It might also, you mentioned the grade change, and it's quite an interesting grade from the looks of things. It'd be good in the if you do proceed to the community meeting, it'd be good to have some images or videos that kind of show that, because most of what we deal with is relatively flat compared to the site you're working with. There is one more item, the climate material that Kevin mentioned. So often these questions get asked at community meetings and sometimes at preliminary meetings, and some developers are quite used to them and already have the answers in their presentations. Some are quite surprised to hear the questions. So we've decided to give a heads up to applicants on our website about the types of questions, just to sort of level the playing field there. So it's how the proposal addresses the climate emergency and the city's climate leadership plan. And other developers are doing things like providing electric vehicle charging, secure bike parking, insulation, energy efficiency, electric heat pumps as opposed to natural gas, burning, convenient places to separate waste from recycled materials and compost, bringing in shared vehicles to try to reduce the number of vehicles that are going to be on site. Have you gone that far into thinking about these things yet at this stage?
So on some of them, certainly. I mean, sustainability for us is really looked at on a holistic basis. So, you know, for some back, like I voluntarily just installed 7 electrical vehicle charging stations at one of our older apartment buildings because we recognize the trend and that's the max capacity we can do. And so let's do it all in one fell swoop. We were the second builder of a passive house design mid-rise building in Canada. Most of our work focuses on the adaptive reuse of existing structures. So we're very keen in. I took the Canadian Sustainable Building Advisor program back in 2010. So sustainability is a key focus of our company. We operate by 2 ethos. One is the golden rule, to treat others the way you'd like to be treated. And the second is living lightly, to minimize our impact. So in terms of car share, it's certainly a consideration. We're currently working with within Fairfield, 1015 Cook Street. Our application there has 3 Moto or Evo car shares that will be on that property. Here, we have not had a discussion with them to date, but it is certainly a consideration. Part of what we want to see is where do we land on parking at the end of the day? And then how is that, if we have extra space over, is that an availability? EV is probably without question a guarantee to be fed to every single stall, at least from a potential charging perspective. And without question, probably at least 1 charging station. We're already doing it on our other properties without, you know, just because we recognize the need. So again, here, I don't see why we wouldn't. And then I think, as I mentioned before, just some of the approaches we're trying to take on, well, we understand we're going to have an impact on the land, but trying to do so in as sensitive a way as we possibly can, while still maintaining the ability to provide new housing. That's certainly one. When it comes to the use of natural gas, we haven't gotten far enough in to determine whether that's something that we would even consider. It's not common that we would put natural gas, like our building in Vancouver that was designed passive house. We do not have any natural gas to that entire 50 some odd thousand square foot structure it has restaurants in it and whatnot. We don't even have natural gas to that. So as we continue to go forward in this sort of evolution of the plan, some of the approaches that we take to those elements will be further informed, but just be certain that we're not looking at it from a perspective without the inclusion of sustainability as a holistic approach to how we undertake things.
And I think, Dave, as well, the other important piece to look at in the city's climate leadership plan is both from a planning perspective and also a transportation perspective. The city's significant number of GHGs are still transportation driven. And so by having a development with shared walls, cluster development, and a minimal parking impact on along a major corridor like Fairfield Road, you're clustering development in a more efficient way, preventing strain on other neighborhood for infill design, which protects also neighborhood character. And so from a number of smart growth principles as well, I believe that this application will help reduce car dependency and support those alternative modes of transportation that you spoke about. And ultimately, I think that'll mean that we can even further reduce parking over time if we are so fortunate as to remain this project as a rental property.
And one thing I'd like to add further, just to Dave, your specific question around bike parking, we intend to use what is currently an underutilized basement space, or effectively space at grade to the existing heritage structure, as a place for secured bike parking. One of the things that this property has going for it is a 90 bike score. Surprisingly, that it has a bus stop right outside of it down on Falvey Road. It's only, I think, a 40 or 41 transit score, but certainly cycling is a great opportunity for folks. And that's one of the things we focused on our 1015 Cook project, was designed the project to encourage cycling, to make it more accessible than it would be otherwise if you had storage in a basement. So our storage for there is it's at grade. We've got a covered area for entry. We've got electric charging for every single bike stall. We've got a bike repair area. We haven't fully developed what we can fit within the existing space within the heritage structure here, but it will be a component of the plan going forward.
And I'd just like to add on another point there too, if I would, Jordan. This application envisions family housing. It's 3 bedrooms on the upper floor with a 1 bedroom underneath, which might be a grandparent or however that might work out. So you're looking at putting family housing in an area that significantly needs it. Across the road at Margaret Jenkins, their out of catchment is at 20% or more. And that goes up when you look at some of the other schools as well in the area. So what we're looking at here is the ability to take some of the cars off the road to be able to reduce that impact from a carbon emissions point of view.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Dawn and Kevin, anything else? Final words, final questions? Not hearing any. I'll again thank the applicants and all the presenters. I'd like to thank the community members who joined us tonight for attending this meeting and getting a heads up on what might be coming and how you can provide additional input and suggestions and objections and questions. I'll just mention again for the people who joined us late that this is a preliminary meeting, not a community meeting. And so at the community meeting, if the applicant chooses to go that far, community members will get a chance to provide their input and ask questions at that meeting. So thank you all once again for the discussion and for attending the meeting, and look forward to hearing about next stages.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all, and we'll call it a night. Hope you have a good one.